Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Satyology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study or science. Satyology means a science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means a science of fake lie imagination or study of fake lie imagination. I keep repeating it because people keep forgetting it. And so we should stop using the word mythology for ancient Vedic histories or ancient traditions of Native Americans or other natives of the world, because it was their tradition. And we must learn to respect everybody's tradition and everybody's culture, whatever it is, whatever it may be or may not be, but especially native ones, people who are never converted. There are a lot of Americans, almost 2.5 to 3 million Native Americans who have maintained their faith, culture, and traditions even today in the United States. And unfortunately, we have stopped calling them First Nations or the nation, American nation today. Today we are talking, we have very, very special guests, a researcher, Swami, Rishi, Muni, Tapasvi, and many adjectives can be attached, many titles can be given. He has done a fabulous research, and yet this time he got featured in one of the leading researchers in India as one of the leading thinkers of India. His photograph was published in a newspaper and extremely popular in India and abroad. So without delay, let us welcome Sri Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji, and greetings to you on the celebration and the holiday season, because it has begun in the Indian context, but it's very much around the corner for America, North America, and United States.
Same to you and to your family, and to all the viewers who are watching the very auspicious occasion of Diwali, where Sri Ram returned to Ayodhya. And that is, I do not call it a victory of good over evil. That is a Christian concept, because Sri Ram is neither good nor evil. And it is a victory of dharma on adharma, very clearly. Dharma means righteousness, and Ravan was not doing his right activities, and he was punished for that. So before we begin there is a when we say whenever the Hindu holiday season comes in, a lot of people, especially Bollywood celebrities, they start speaking that there should be no firecrackers, this firecracker free, and this has started. But at the same time, we do a mass scale firecrackers on cricket matches and in India, and also in public display of fireworks. Where is this opposition, warranted or unwarranted? Because right now we feel it is just targeting Hindus only.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it has become a favorite pastime of the forces who somehow feel envious, somehow feel or somehow don't feel envious and don't like, for whatever reasons that are beyond my comprehension, the Indian culture, Indian civilization. So Sanatan civilization. So yes, the firecrackers, they don't have a problem. In fact, you talked of Bollywood, and just recently, one of the famous actor and his young son, who was into drug racket or alleged to be in a drug racket or all that. And I think he was caught. He was in the custody, and I think he received the bail. And so when he came out, there was a firecrackers going on. So that apparently is not a problem. So obviously, people. I mean, these people. I mean, the Bollywood guys are available for hire. Everyone in Bollywood. Okay. Now there are exceptions in every place. So I'm not talking about that. There are always exceptions. Exceptions to the rule, and that proves the rule. But for most part, they are ready for hire. And so wherever the money comes from and whatever the message they are asked to broadcast, they will do it. So it has become not just limited to Bollywood, certain politicians and whatnot, and certain so-called public intellectuals. Okay, the only thing I usually see is lacking is the intellect, but that doesn't stop them from being a public intellectual. They are ready for hire. They're like insurgents. You give them a money, you tell them what to do, and they will do it with whatever skill they have developed. So that's what you will see. That's what you will see right now. But anything that is not related to the native civilization in India, and these people will just change their narrative, change their faces, and start talking about it. So we have to expose them. We have to expose them with information, with the knowledge, and everyone. When I say we, it's not just you and me or some few limited people. Every single individual who cares for this has to do his or her role. That is our swadharma, shreyan swadharma viguna, no matter how big or how small. And things will change. And if it don't change, I see these as sometimes, Adityaji, very positive things in a different fashion. Although they are not good by themselves, at least it wakes up sleepy Indians. So that is a positive factor I see.
No, that's true. It wakes up sleeping Indians. And also there is a very organized international propaganda against everything native. Native means original from the land. And whether it's a South Americans or North American or even Persian, Navroz is a Persian festival. It's a Zoroastrian festival. It's nothing to do
Correct.
with Islam.
Yeah.
But still, there is that propaganda against that also, even till date in Persia. So
Right.
it's a global phenomena to downplay the native cultures, and so probably it is getting funded by the people associated with the Abrahamic faiths directly. What do you say?
Well, I would say it may be. I mean, I don't know those who fund it. They may be associated with Abrahamic faiths, but I'm not sure they always understand the consequences of it. Because unfortunately, I mean, we as a humanity, we have to understand the common underlying spirit, and unfortunately, it creates a controversy, or it creates conflict for no reason. I mean, something as wonderful as a celebration, as a festival, or in the Indian context or the Indian Sanskrit word utsav, okay, to use this in a very foolish fashion is very unfortunate. For example, let me give you an anecdote. I mean, I'm living in North America for now 30 plus years, and I have friends of all hues and kinds, you can say, from every continent you can name, of every color, race, whatever language, any diversity factor you want to mention. And I have participated in practically all kinds of, even all religious festivals, even Abrahamic festivals. Just as an anecdote, I'll say, like during the by this time, October, or even Dashara or Dasra or Vijayadashmi, like that we just celebrated a few days ago. Sometime in what, September, October, that's when it will come. So if not Vijayadashmi, maybe definitely Deepavali, the Diwali, we will put the lights on, lights on the porch, and maybe on the plants and trees and inside the house, and so on and so forth. Now we do not in my household, and I know few friends of Indian origin, they do not take them away until 1st of January. So we celebrate Vijayadashmi. Okay. And I'll come back to what you said, which was so beautiful. You said it's not a victory of a good over evil, because they are very limited words. Now, English language, and so we use it and we don't think twice about it. But victory of a dharma over adharma is more precise and more accurate, and we'll talk about that too. But the lighting arrangements and decorations that I was talking, so we just keep them. And then after that, Vijayadashmi, the Diwali comes, the Deepavali time comes. And after that, there is a American Thanksgiving. Now, when I was in Canada, we used to do it, and it was a Canadian Thanksgiving, which happens a month before American Thanksgiving. Then Diwali, and then American Thanksgiving. And then there is a Christmas time. And of course, after that, the New Year. So we can always take the good of every cultural setup, every civilization, even the religions, like which is an organized religion such as Abrahamic religions. I mean, there are certain aspects that we can always look at it in a very neutral but positive fashion. Now, the negative aspects, we should point them out. We should point them out to the followers of those particular religions. We should point them out to others, to the native traditions, because many times natives are so deracinated that they do not understand some of the evil aspects of organized religion. So that, leaving that aside, when it comes to celebration, I mean, human being, okay, that's the same. Even animals participate. I mean, if you have pets, you'll see the pets are happy when there is a celebration. So my point is, as you said, that native traditions should be incorporated. That's what the Thanksgiving is about. Now, anytime we talk of a festival, we can always bring, if we choose to, a negative aspect of it. Just like and you've written a book on native traditions. Just like the Thanksgiving, such a wonderful time, is also associated with much negativity as to what the European Americans did to the Native Americans, so many times using the occasion of a Thanksgiving. In fact, Thanksgiving is a somewhat a Native American tradition that has been imbibed. You see the similarities everywhere, Adityaji. This is a harvest festival, right? In some ways, it's a harvest festival. What we will see today is how, when we do celebrations, why we do celebrations, how it is connected with the itihasa, the history, but it's how it is very well connected with the rhythms of nature. I mean, you call the natural religion or native religion or native tradition or natural tradition, how it is perfectly synchronized with native tradition, including some aspects of Abrahamic traditions. For example, Christmas, and think of Easter. Like Christmas is what, 25th of, I mean, maybe I'll just hang on to that, but Christmas is 25th of December when we celebrate. And Easter is during the March, April timeframe. Guess what? They are actual celebrations of the nature, the changes in the season, changes in the nature. And rightfully so, they were connected with some religious aspect or some historical aspect. And we are going to talk about that. And if the time comes, and if I remember, I will talk about the Christmas and also the Easter and how that created a controversy, especially Easter, going back 1,000 years. Okay, that's Roger Bacon, in like, I think it was 12th or 13th century. And he was worried that there is a calendar has gone out of whack, which was the case in Europe until 16th century. So that's just a quick background or quick thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Nireshji. And for all the viewers who are watching, you can switch to channel 9 to view it properly. 11 is not working. You can check on presentation, Nireshji, if you wish.
Okay, I don't have a presentation, in fact, today. In fact, what I'm going to do, Adityaji, I thought I will take 5 events or 5 specific festival or celebrations from the Indian tradition, and we will discuss them one by one.
Yes.
And we will end it with the Deepavali, the festival of lights. Okay, I mean, the festival of lights is a very crude, somewhat inaccurate translation in English. That is the limitation of English language. Okay, but we will talk about those. And just what I want to bring, if you want to think, like usually we talk of scientific triangulation, this is also scientific triangulation, but I can call this a cultural triangulation, which is we have a celebration. Okay, and then we have a rhythm of a nature, like it has to synchronize with the nature and also with our itihasa, with our history. So we'll talk 5. So after everyone is done, if you have a questions in between, we can discuss those, and then we'll go on to the next festival.
Yeah.
The first festival I would like to talk about, like you can relate to, one of the reason behind the celebrations, behind the festivals, is actually multiple reason, but one of the reason is to synchronize and calibrate the calendar. Okay, now of course, why do we want to synchronize and calibrate the calendar? Not for the sake of it, because it is tightly connected with our prosperity, right? Anna vastra nivara, roti kapda makan, okay, or the food, clothing and shelter. Okay, so this all depends on we doing the right things at the right time around the year. So in that sense, it's connected with the calendar. So let's begin with, in the Indian context, for the Indian lunisolar calendar, the first day of the year. Okay, now within India, just imagine the diversity. I mean, sometimes it's surprising, it's overwhelming, and the Western countries are confused. Okay, I mean, India is like such a perfect amalgamation, different languages, but same culture. right? So the first day of the year in the Indian lunisolar calendar, what is the name as you know it, Aditya ji? Then I'll tell you the few names.
Ugadi, Makar Sankranti.
Right? Yeah. That time, right? So Ugadi is one. In Maharashtra, do you know what is the word for the first day? Let's see how much you have remembered. Okay. No, it's Gudi
Gudi
Padwa.
Padwa. Yes.
Gudi Padwa, right? So Gudi Padwa, and then Ugadi in the Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka region. If you go
Onam.
northern part, Baisakhi, like
Baisakhi.
Punjab, right? Punjab, Haryana, in the area.
Onam.
Now, yeah, go ahead. So originally it was a celebration of the beginning of a year that began with spring equinox. Okay. You were saying something, Aditya ji?
Onam. Onam.
Onam, yeah, Onam, very good. Onam, yeah, in the south. So because India used a very sophisticated and complicated calendar, well, anything sophisticated is complicated in some fashion, but it's sophisticated for a reason, and therefore it is complicated. It's more precise and more accurate. So the day, because they use the lunar day, lunar tithi, lunar month, lunar paksha every day, it did not always will fall on the day of spring equinox, like say in our Gregorian calendar, like 20th of March. Even that is not exactly fixed. Sometimes it comes on 28th, 21st, 22nd, 19th of March. But for average, we will take everything as a 21st. So 21st March, 21st June, 21st September, 21st December as a perfect approximations for the four cardinal points like spring equinox, fall equinox, summer solstice, and winter solstice. It's very well connected with that. In fact, the old Roman calendar was also connected. For example, Marche, like start, was the first month, and that at least some time ago, and it's thought to be like matching around 45 BCE with the day of spring equinox. Okay, so Gudi Padwa, it is the beginning of a year that begins with the spring season, and in the Indian calendar, the 12 months are divided into 6 seasons, 2 months each. And so now there is a solar calendar, but there is also a lunar calendar, and that's why the Indian calendar system is called lunisolar calendar. So this Gudi Padwa, as it happens in our times, it begins on Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, the first day of the lunar month of Chaitra. Just after the Falgun Amavasya, the first day is the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, and that is celebrated as Ugadi, and that is celebrated as Gudi Padwa. Now, that's just a celebration. I mean, I don't want to say just a celebration. It's a big celebration, but it is celebrated in many different ways. I'm not even personally familiar with how exactly it is celebrated in, say, Karnataka or Andhra Pradesh or rest of the India. But I'll tell you how it is done in Maharashtra. But I want to connect that with how old is that tradition. For example, in Maharashtra, the word is used Gudi Padwa. The Gudi Padwa is like a first day, you can say, of the year. But the Gudi is literally what you do is you create a flag. You create a flag post out of a bamboo stick or some wood stick. You put it as a flag, and on top of it, you have either a copper or a silver or a gold kalash, like a gold pot, put it upside down with a piece of very auspicious color cloth, a flower garland, and then kumkum and haldi and all that decorations. And the ground floor would also be cleaned, disinfected with the cow dung and water and all that. And then their different designs are drawn. And then, of course, there will be food and different festivities, and that's how it is celebrated. Ugadi is very similar. Now, what I want to tell you is that how old is this tradition? First, just the fact that we celebrate on the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, the first day of the lunar month of Chaitra, that tradition is 2,000-year-old. Now people will say, my God, 2,000-year-old. I'm going to say only 2,000-year-old, because I'm going to give you some more interesting information. Why 2,000-year-old, and how do we know that? Because if you understand why it is celebrated as a new year, of course, but the beginning of a Vasanta Rutu or a spring season. And in India, when does the spring season begin per the Indian calendar system? And of course, what you see in nature, it begins 1 month before 21st of March, just so that everyone can relate to I'm using 21st March, 1 month before 21st March. So it's like around 20th of February. Now, what is happening there? That is when the beginning of Vasanta Rutu. Now, lunar month of Chaitra no longer falls into February, March. Actually, it falls into March and April. Now, why has that happened? The famous phenomenon of the astronomy phenomenon of the precession of the equinoxes. That actually tells us, that actually allows us to decide, allows us to find out when this particular tradition of celebrating Gudi Padwa on a Chaitra Shukla Pratipada began. We can tell approximately it began 2000, 3000 years ago, because that is when lunar month of Chaitra occurred at the beginning of the Vasanta Rutu, like in our times, say between 20 February to 20 March, that time frame, it aligned with it. But I want to surprise you, or I want to tell you something, and you decide whether you are surprised or not. That same celebration, the words are different. It's not called Gudi Padwa. It's not called Ugadi, but it is called the end of a Samvatsar and a beginning of a Samvatsar, the first day of a Samvatsar, which is a new year. It is described in beautiful details in Mahabharata, which is more than 7,500 years old. A perfect description is given what to do, like, go to the forest, bring a bamboo stick, okay, and do arrange the gudi in this fashion. The word gudi is not used, and do the puja, okay, and that's the beginning of a year. Do the prayer, chant the holy, the mantras, and so on and so forth. But guess what? It's not limited to even the Mahabharata times going back to 7,500 years ago. In fact, the name is different. In Mahabharata times, this same festival of a Gudi Padwa or Ugadi or a Baisakhi, it is called as a Brahma Utsav, the Utsav of Brahma. But the arrangement is very, very similar to Gudi Padwa. But let me take you further back in antiquity. If you go back to 14,000 years to the time of Ramayana, we have multiple descriptions of this particular festival or particular celebration, Utsav, in Ramayana. Now, again, different name. In time of Ramayana, it is called Indra Dwaja Utsav. Indra Dwaja Utsav. Indra is the deity, the power that is responsible for rain and all of that. Dwaja is that flag that I'm referring to, the Gudi, okay? And Utsav is, of course, a celebration point of view, okay? So in the Ramayana 14,000 years ago, it's called Indra Dwaja Utsav, something very interesting. During the Ramayana times, it was celebrated during the lunar month of Ashwin and not Chaitra. So almost you can think in the calendar, if you think of a calendar of 12 months, exactly opposite time. So Chaitra, from Chaitra, Vaishak, Jeshta, Ashad, Shravan, Bhadrapad, Ashwin. So they're separated by 6 months. Okay, the lunar month of Chaitra and Ashwin. How beautiful. So what does that mean? In our times, whenever we are celebrating Ugadi or a Gudi Padwa, we are essentially celebrating a native Indian tradition that has a history of at least 14,000 years. We don't happen to have evidence before Ramayana, and we may find one, but as of now, we can say it's a 14,000-year-old tradition. Names have changed, the times have changed. Now, something has changed and something has not. What I mean by that is, in the Ramayana times, we celebrated during the lunar month of Ashwin. Now we celebrate during the lunar month of Chaitra, but guess what? The season when we celebrate is exactly the same. That time, the season of the Vasanta Rutu occurred during Ashwin month. Now it occurs during the Chaitra month. And of course, it's slightly shifting. One more thing, and Aditya ji, I'll give you time to ask you any questions before I move on to the next celebration. Interestingly, if you go to Nepal, a small country sandwiched between China and India in the beautiful Himalayas, they celebrate this Ramayana tradition, the Indra Dwaja Utsav, they call it Indra Jatra, with exactly the same way that the Gudi Padwa is celebrated in Maharashtra, or the descriptions of this particular Samvatsara festival occurs in Mahabharata or Ramayana, in a place called Patan, just outside Kathmandu. And they call it Indra Jatra. And you will see actually this Dhwaja, Indra Dhwaja, the flag post, okay? Big tree, actually, the trunk of a tree, like they use the whole tree as a flag post, and it's also decorated in the same way. And do you know when they celebrate? They celebrate during the month of Ashwin and Bhadrapad. So what is interesting is, say that the people of Nepal, they continued with that Ramayana tradition, and that shouldn't surprise you, because Sita, the what you call the Janakpuri, right now you see that as a part of Nepal and very much on the border there, and Ayodhya on the other side in India. So that area, so the tradition remained vibrant, and they celebrate to this day. They stuck with the month. So even when season changed, they just kept on celebrating in Ashwin and Bhadrapad, which is how it was celebrated in Ramayana. Just like we are celebrating the Ugadi and Gudi Padwa in Chaitra, although it has shifted by 2000 years. Meaning right now, frankly, if we want to stick with the exact season and stick with the season and change the month, then we should do it in Falgun, 1 month before Chaitra. But just like we have continued with the Chaitra, that's what they did, the people of Nepal did. But do you know how long? For 14,000 years. That's why they're stuck with Ashwin. It no longer occurs in Vasanta's Rutu or spring season. Now it occurs in the fall season. That's fine. But that has basically what has happened. So this is my one of the five and the big one, Aditya. So if you have any questions, let me know. And then I'll move on to the next one, which is Makar Sankrant.
No, the very fascinating thing is the many Bollywood stars of India continue to search for India. India was made according to them during British rule. Before that, India did not exist. And also the secondary is, they say, keep on saying, it's again a colonial propaganda. They keep on saying that the festivals of India are regional, but if you see the dates and the names and the process of worship, it's all same.
Yeah. So basically, I have falsified whatever the nonsense they are spouting out. I have falsified just taking one celebration of a Gudi Padwa, Ugadi, Baisakhi.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a Brahmotsav in the Mahabharata times. It's a Indra Utsav in a Ramayana times, and more than 14,000 years of this tradition.
And Indrotsav is also celebrated according to Valmiki Ramayana in Udaygiri.
Okay, by the way, and yesterday I was talking to someone, and Indra Utsav is also understood in Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know exactly when it gets celebrated. So somebody I was talking to yesterday, actually Mrudula Ji Anand, and she said it's done. Then one very good friend of mine, Deepa Bhaskaran, she's in the Chicago area, and she had brought to my attention that particular festival, including the poetries and how it is celebrated in a beautiful way in South. So again, that stupid argument, whoever that came up with this argument without any basis, without any evidence. That's what I mean. Like the languages are different, even how the dress you dress up and what you eat might slightly change, actually may change significantly depending on what's available. Because do you know, Aditya ji, that from a agriculture perspective, the entire India has practically all the different zones that are described in World Agriculture.
Correct.
Like, so you can practically grow, I mean, you name a particular fruit or a grain, and you will find a place in India where you can grow it. Yes. So India has, I forgot the number, but my food expert, he's a world famous food expert. I will not mention the name. I don't have his permission. He has mentioned that India is so diverse, not only in the languages and the dresses and clothing, but even in the agriculture zone. If something exists in the world as a food item, you can grow it in some part of India, at least in some part of India. So that's the diversity of it. But yes, the culture is similar. Next thing I'm going to do is Makar Sankranta. So you have any other questions about Gudi Padwa or Ugadi or Baisakhi? No? Okay. Quickly, one point I will mention about the Baisakhi. See, Baisakhi comes from the second month, Vaishak. Okay, the wa becomes ba, and therefore Baishakhi. So just like it is also a Samvatsar celebration, it is also a Vasanta Rutu, beginning of Vasanta Rutu celebration, beginning of a New Year celebration. Now, what is interesting about that is somewhere most of the India adjusted 2000 years ago and changed it and said, hey, no longer the month of Vaishak matches with the beginning of Vasanta Rutu. So we are going to change it to Chaitra month. While most of the India did that, said parts of Punjab did not do it. They said, no, we continue to do it in a Vaishak fashion. We will continue it that way. So when they call Vaisakhi, in a way, actually, they're referring to a tradition of a New Year celebration, which is 4,000-year-old. If Chaitra is a 2,000-year-old, then it's a 4,000-year-old. And of course, if you take a Gudi Padwa in a certain fashion, it's a 7,500 years old tradition as far back as Mahabharata, or 14,000-year-old tradition as far back as Ramayana, as the Indradwaja festival. And every reason to believe that it actually would be very much more ancient, because we have the well-established nakshatra system, well-established New Year system, multiple calendars, multiple beginnings of the year for different purposes, for agriculture, for celebration, for something else, for travel, for commerce, and so on and so forth. So there is every reason to believe it is even older. But as a documented evidence, even just the documented evidence, we can talk about 14,000 years. Let's go to second one, Makar Sankranta. Now, as you said, it also falls, it feels like as if it falls around there. Well, let's just clarify that. While the Gudi Padwa, Ugadi, Baisakhi comes in the March and April, the Makar Sankranta occurs on a very fixed day. This is a bit funny, right? But I'll explain why it is so. Because whereas the Gudi Padwa is connected with the lunar month, the event of Makar Sankranta is connected with the solar year. And that is why we celebrate it. It's a very much a Sanatana, very much a Hindu celebration, but it is celebrated on a specific day, and that changes a bit by one day sometime per Gregorian calendar. So we celebrate it for most part on the 14th of January. Sometime it gets to 15th of January, and I'll explain why that happens. But why it is fixed to a English or Gregorian calendar date? Because Gregorian calendar is called English calendar in India because it's the English colonialism that brought that calendar and forced on Indians, right? So why that 14 days so fixed? And that used to be my curiosity when I was growing up. And then I found out, and now I would like to share, and many of you might already know this, that again, this tradition of Makar Sankranti, Adityaji, is also at least 2,000-year-old. Now, that is not to say that it did not exist before, but it would not have been called Makar Sankranti. It would have been called by some other name. So how do we know that it is 2,000 years old? The astronomy formula would be 25 multiplied by 72. It will give you a number which is close to 1800. 25 multiplied by 72. So we'll come to that, how that number came, and not spend much time on it. But what is it? If the Gudi Padwa, Ugadi, Baisakhi, or in a Western context, the what is the festival that comes like after Christmas, around March and April? I just, my getting old, my memory is deceiving me. Like
Easter.
Easter, thank you. The eggs, I was going to say find the eggs and whatnot, right? Rabbit. And so yeah, Easter. So Easter, for example, in the Western context was very much a celebration of the spring equinox, just like 25th December. Okay. Of course, in a Christianity, they have connected that to Jesus Christ, and which is fine for celebration. That's absolutely makes sense. We are going to talk about this, how we connect many cultural memories to a particular day. But basically, it is a celebration of a winter solstice. The 25th December, the Christmas is a celebration of a winter solstice. Okay. The peak of cold, not in terms of weather, but in terms of the solar heat or the day length has reached the minimum, and now it's going to get bigger. The sunlight time is going to get bigger. It's a celebration of that. And so when they started celebrating, or rather I should say, when they decided, let's celebrate Christmas or the birth of Jesus on 25th October. It has nothing to do with actually when Jesus was born, assuming he was born. Okay, I mean, we don't know much about the historicity, although so much money and time is spent in theological schools. And if somebody wants to do it, that's perfectly fine. But the Nicaea Council, like the 3rd or 4th century, so think of the 4th century, when they were trying to finally canonize the Christian literature, at that time they said, okay, so when should we celebrate Jesus' birth? And they again went back to the native traditions, because the native traditions of Europe, okay, were celebrating. They were celebrating winter solstice, they were celebrating spring equinox, they were celebrating summer solstice, they were celebrating fall equinox. In people, I mean, some of us who may be listening from Ohio, and some of you may know, just east of Cincinnati, if you go, there is that Serpent Park there, a big snake-like structure. It is a very native structure. Aditya, have you been there ever? I mean, I'm not getting the right name of it that right now, but I have been there. Me and Ashwini have been there.
I've been there, but I don't recall the name exactly.
Right. And so if you look at by the way, if you look at the orientation, something you will find very fascinating. There is a astronomy research on that structure. And when that snake's faces and the way it is pointing towards like a northwest, and if you see the angle of that, and there are some people who have speculated, and that could be right, but there is no additional evidence. So we need few things to triangulate. The angle at which that snake is looking, and if you take that as a point of the sunset on the summer solstice, pay attention. Do you know where it takes you? It takes you back to 14,000 years.
Wow.
Okay, it takes you back. I mean, Graham Hancock has covered in his book, but I wish there was additional evidence. My point is there are, and people would say, oh my God, 14,000 years ago, Ohio, wasn't there a glacier? It was covered under glacier. Surprise, surprise. Actually, it was not. It was very close to that place. Just north of that place was a glacier, but not that particular site in Ohio. Something fascinating. Okay, so I was talking about 25th December and the connection of a celebration. Makar Sankranti essentially is the same celebration. Okay, I'm not saying it's a Christian celebration. I'm saying it's a celebration of a winter solstice. Now what has happened is, in our calendar, it's the 21st December is the day of winter solstice. But now we celebrate it on the 14th of January. Now, why that gap? The answer is, when about 2000 years ago, when India made that change and started celebrating the day of winter solstice, they called it Makar Sankranta. What is Makar? Those of you who are familiar with the 12 zodiac of of the solar eclipse belt, which is what starts with Aries and ends with Pisces, the Makar is Capricorn. Okay, and each Rashi or each zodiac has a area of a 30 degree. So 30 times 12 is a 360 degree. It so happened some 2000 years ago, when the day of winter solstice occurred, that was also the time that matched with sun entering the area of a zodiac Capricorn or Makar. So as a social signal, okay, just like you need to give a name, right? Winter solstice, instead of calling winter solstice, they call it Makar Sankranta. That's what we are celebrating. Okay, just like here we will call Independence Day or Labor Day. And when we say Independence Day, in the context, we understand what that means. Okay, it was the independence of United States of America from the colonial oppression of the British. Okay, so that's when happened, and that was happened to be 4th of July. We understand that, but we don't give this whole background every time. We just say Independence Day party or Independence Day firecrackers, right? Something like this. So that way it was called Makar Sankranta. Now, what the Indian tradition did over last 2000 years is, while the day of, because of the precession of the Earth's axis, while the day of winter solstice was shifting, and how much it shifts? It shifts by 1 degree, or you can say 1 degree is equal to 1 day, because sun completes one circle in what, 365 days, so almost like 360 days. So it goes 1 degree in 1 day approximately. So for a sun, or for a particular point like winter solstice to shift through more than 1 degree, it takes 72 years, or shifts by 1 day, it takes 72 years. Now we can find out exactly when this tradition began, because right now we celebrate this on a 15th or 14th of January. So you take 14th days of or 15 days of January plus add the 10 days of December, because 21st December is our winter solstice now. So that's 25. Now you take that 25 multiplied by 72, approximately comes to 1800 years. That is when sun used to enter Capricorn, when winter solstice occurred. Therefore, we were calling it Makar Sankranta. We still call it Makar Sankranta. We still celebrate when sun enters the Capricorn or the Makara Rashi. But unfortunately, or doesn't have to be unfortunate, it so happens that it is no longer the day of winter solstice. That has happened to Christmas, that had happened to Easter. And therefore, Roger Bacon was so much worried in 12th century. He sent a letter to the Pope saying, please fix the calendar. But nobody was even understanding calendar in the Western Europe, how to fix it. Even if they knew the problem, they didn't know how to fix it. They couldn't fix it until the knowledge from India become available to them. This is a history, guys. Okay, the competitions, but the knowledge of the astronomy, the knowledge of the calendrics, okay, that came with the Jesuit priest from India to Europe. And finally, with a lot of caution and all of this communication, people could convince the Pope, and finally Gregory changed it in 1582 by dropping 10 days from the old calendar, which is now we call Julian calendar, and they made some additional changes. So that's the story of Makar Sankranti. Aditya, if you have any questions, let me know. If not, we will move to very interesting and humorous thing. So there are two pieces now. The next thing, any questions on Makar Sankranta?
No, Ishtar,
No.
Ishtar, just the Ishtar, or the Easter.
Yeah.
That is the festival of Anahita, which was worshipped by native Europeans in Egypt also. It's nothing but the form of Durga with 8 arms.
Interesting. And from a nature point of view, from the rhythm point of view, the rhythms of a nature, it is a rejuvenation.
Correct.
Okay, because winter, everything is cold, and now the spring has come, which Christianity linked with resurrection.
That's right.
Resurrection of Jesus. Think of it, right?
Syncretism.
In a way, it's interesting. For common signal, I don't mind if they do that, as long as they don't turn dogmatic,
Correct.
into saying this is how it happened and don't ask me questions.
So exactly, they made it like that. It's dogmatic.
Of course. That is the problem with any isms or any organized religions, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
But I want to discuss now two instances, and both are very interesting for two different reasons. The first instance I want to discuss two events, but together. Now, our famous Bhishma Nirvana, like you and me, Aditya ji, have done 4 or 5 episodes on this, and very popular. So go back to Mahabharata times again, 7,500 years ago. And so Bhishma, the war lasted for 18 days. Bhishma fell down in the battle on the 10th day of the war. He's the commander general of the Kaurava side, fought very bravely, very old, by the way, 140 years old. People won't believe that, but he's fighting fearlessly for 10 days. He falls down in the battle. He has some specific siddhi, some mystic power, you can say, a simple, crude translation, that he can choose the time of his death. Everyone has to die, that's given here, but he has to choose he can choose the time of his death, okay, and in what way it occurs and so on. Now, based on the assumptions, beliefs, whatever you want to call it, of that time, people preferred, if they had a choice, and not everyone has a choice, they prefer to pass away, okay, give up their life, if possible, when sun had turned northward, like that's called Uttarayan. Okay, so essentially in our times, we can say from 21st December to 21st June, sometime around that time. Now, he fell down on 25th October, okay, and it's the Julian calendar we are referring to, and it was the almost 100 days before the day of winter solstice. Okay, so he wanted to pass away his body after the winter solstice. So he has some 100+ days, and he didn't want to do it. So he wanted to lie down. He just said, he's a warrior. He doesn't want to lie on the bed of ordinary bed. So he's lying on the bed of arrows, like there are so many arrows gone into his body. That's how he wants to stay. So he did that. Now, we celebrate this as a cultural memory of this Bhishma Nirvana uh, in the month of Magha. And so everyone, one of you may not be familiar with the lunar month names, but stay with me. Just like we have a January, February, March, April, all the way to December. Uh, now, these are somewhat arbitrary names, by the way. They're numbers, right? Especially if you go after September, October, November, December, those are like 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and there used to be a year of 10 months in the West, but also if you go back 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 plus years, it is there even in Rigveda. Okay, I'll not discuss that today. And so here in the West also, there was a one time, even not that long ago, Roman times, there was a year of 10 months, and there was an approximate 2-month gap. Think of it as a January, February. And then the March is when the year began again. And if you go back to the Roman records and Greek records, you will find that the March, there is a perfect evidence to show March was first month of the year, Marche, number one. And it fits because March is 1, April is 2, May is 3, June is 4, July is 5, August is 6. And now see what happens. September, October, November, December, Septiembre, right? Then October, November, Diciembre, right? Whichever language you're looking at it. So 7, 8, 9, 10. And then there was a gap of 2 months that was approximately calculated. And that's what screwed up the European calendar, by the way. Okay. Because there was no good knowledge of astronomy. There was no good knowledge of mathematics. They didn't have a sophisticated ability to compute like what India had. And that was the challenge at that time. But back to Bhishma Nirvana. So in a celebration format, Bhishma Nirvana is celebrated as a Bhishmashtami. Bhishma Ashtami. So it's the eighth day of a lunar month, and it is celebrated as a Magha, month of Magha, Shukla Ashtami. Okay, now what is the problem with that? Multiple problems. But first problem is, although we celebrate it and we don't know how long we are celebrating, I like to think maybe we are celebrating for 400 years. That's it. This is my speculation, but I have evidence for that I will not go today into it. 400 years maximum, possibly. Okay, it could have been done before, but I don't know that. I have a reason to think it's 400 years. Magha Shukla Ashtami. But remember, if we do not understand history in its proper context, and if we take it in a dogmatic fashion and we start insisting that this is itself historically correct, we can still celebrate on Magha Shukla Ashtami, just like we celebrate Christmas on 25th of December. By the way, if 21st December is the day of winter solstice, why are we celebrating on 25th December? I'll give you an answer to that quickly. In the Nicaea Council, when the followers of Christianity came together and formally they were canonizing their text, what Mark said about Jesus and what Paul said about Jesus and what Luke said about Jesus, and somehow trying to bring the stories together because not much was known at that time. In deciding the celebration of the birth of Jesus, they chose the winter solstice. But why did they not choose 21st December? Why did they choose 25th December? Again, there is a reason for it. Because at that time, the Roman calendar that existed was assumed to be from the time of Julius Caesar. Okay, that's why we call it Julian calendar, if you think of it. And that was assumed to have started with Julius Caesar and therefore 45 BCE. Now, the way Julian calendar works, again, I will not go into technicality, but it's slightly different than Gregorian calendar, is that every 128 years, the point of winter solstice would shift by 1 day. That was the worry that Roger Bacon had in 12th or 13th century, by the way. He said, hey, we are celebrating Easter Day on a very wrong day. We are celebrating Christmas on the wrong day. That was his complaint. Because in the Julian calendar, the actual day will shift. So the point of equinox or winter solstice will shift by 1 day every 128 years. So now think of 45 BC to 300 AD. So approximately like a 300 years, 300 plus years have gone by. And if you do 3 times 12 times 3, that's like a 360 years. So therefore, from 45 BC to the time when the Nicene Council is deciding when we should celebrate birthday of Jesus, and they already decided we are going to take winter solstice as the time we are going to call it the birthday of Jesus. But to decide what that day is, they used the Julian calendar because that's the calendar they were using. And they made this correction of a 3 days because 360 years approximately have gone by. Therefore, they decided 25th December. To be, I mean, if you just like Makar Sankranta, we should now celebrate on the 21st December rather than 14th January. If we are truly celebrating winter solstice, so to say. Or if we're celebrating Gudi Padwa as the beginning of a year at the beginning of Vasanta Rutu, then we truly should celebrate from Falguna Shukla Pratipada and not Chaitra Shukla Pratipada. So these gaps do occur. But I want to tell you something more funny, which is this. So now if you take something dogmatically, in case of say Bhishmashtami, the Bhishma Ashtami, meaning when Bhishma passed away, Bhishma Nirvana, it is the day of Magha Shukla Ashtami. So think of this as a 8th day of the month. So you can forget Magha and Shukla for a minute. Now the same tradition also celebrates Bhishma Ekadashi, which comes 3 days after the day of Bhishma Nirvana. It comes on a Magha Shukla Ekadashi. So it comes 3 days after in the Indian calendar. And do you know what these 2 days are celebrated for? Magha Ashtami is celebrated for passing away of Bhishma. Now pay attention, then I hope you get the humor. 3 days after, the tradition celebrates Bhishma Ekadashi. And what is it celebrated for? It is that day on which Bhishma told Vishnu Sahasranam to Yudhishthir. Adityaji, do you get the humor of this?
Yes.
Yes. So Bhishma passed away on Bhishma Ashtami, and 3 days after, Bhishma is telling Vishnu Sahasranam to Yudhishthir. Okay. Why did this happen? Because we are taking something as a celebration and confusing that with the historical reality. So what is a historical reality? Historical reality is that Bhishma told Vishnu Sahasranam to Yudhishthir, yes, it was a day of a Ekadashi. Of course, it was not the Magha Shukla Ekadashi, but it was a day of Ekadashi. In fact, it was a Pausha Vadya Ekadashi, Pausha Ekadashi of a second half. Then after that day, actually Yudhishthir comes back to Hastinapur. Mahabharata tells us. And he stayed in Hastinapur for 15 nights until the day of winter solstice, after listening to Vishnu Sahasranam from Bhishmacharya. And when, after staying there for 50 days, the day of winter solstice occurred, and the next day he came back to Bhishma. And remember, Bhishma wanted to pass away only after 21st of December and before 21st of June in our times, the way we would understand it. So he wanted to pass away after the day of winter solstice. So the next day, 31st of January, 5560 BCE, which is a day after winter solstice, Bhishma passed away. Yudhishthira stayed there outside Hastinapur, in Hastinapur, away from Kurukshetra for 50 nights before coming back. If we understand this, now first thing then, by the way, Bhishma Nirvana is not the day of a Magha Shukla Ashtami. In fact, it occurs based on a Mahabharata evidence into Falguna Krishna or Falguna Vadya Tritiya or Chaturthi. So it is, think of it as a 3 or 4 days after the full moon day in the month of Falgun. That's when it occurs. But if you take whatever we celebrate in a dogmatic fashion, we are going to have these humorous things such as Bhishma passing away on a certain day, and after 3 days he's telling Vishnu Sahasranam to Yudhishthir, and then after that Yudhishthir has to go to Hastinapur for 50 days and come back for Bhishma Nirvana. That just cannot happen. Okay, that's it. Now we are going to go to the last one and we will stop, which is the Vijayadashmi, the Dashahara day that we talked about, and the Deepavali, which is going to be celebrated all around the world next week. Okay, so Vijayadashmi is 10th day of a Ashwin month. Okay, it occurs somewhere around September, October timeframe. And after that 20 days, the end of a Ashwin month is the Amavasya. Okay, the new moon day is when we have the Deepavali. Now, Deepavali is the end of a 1 year, okay, and a beginning of a new year. That's why in some Indian tradition it's called a Padwa, another Padwa day, okay. For business people, that is the end of the year. Deepavali is the end of the year. That's why it's called Lakshmi Pujan, okay. So finally, you know, there better be some Lakshmi, there better be some wealth. Of course, Lakshmi, wealth is like limited, or money is a limited translation of a wealth or Lakshmi, but in a crude sense, but the prosperity, and you are being thankful for that prosperity. You are thanking the deities, you're thanking the nature. That is that Deepavali festival. So it's the end of 1 year, beginning of a new year. There were many calendars, as I said, in the Indian system, and it was meant for proper keeping up of a time, because many calendars, you have to always ensure that they synchronize with each other, and that helped them calibrate it. So now another funny story, funny in a humorous sense, you know, nothing wrong with when we celebrate. Now, these 2 days are associated with Ramayana and Rama. And I think that's what Aditya mentioned at the beginning of our talk. So now in a traditional celebration, Vijayadashmi day, so 20 days before Deepavali, is celebrated as the day when Rama killed Ravan. Okay, so Ashwin Shukla Dashmi, that is how it is celebrated. And the Deepavali day, which is a Amavasya day, dark day, like a no moon in the sky, so to say, because it's a Amavasya, the new moon day. And therefore, some people think, therefore, all the big line of beautiful lamps is been placed around the house, around the paths, and so on and so forth, just like a Christmas decoration, you can say. Well, Christmas decoration, we understand in a way, in the Northern Hemisphere anyways, okay, because it's very dark, so the lights looks better. So Deepavali is somewhat thought like that too. And there is a relative significance like that because it's a day of Amavasya. But it is also connected with Rama's arrival in Ayodhya. So Rama has left Ayodhya 14 years ago. And after 14 years, he's coming back. And that is the day of a Deepavali. That is how we celebrate as a cultural memory. Again, what I want to show you is this. If you read Valmiki Ramayana, or if you read my book, The Historic Rama, or 12,209, you will see how the Valmiki Ramayana evidence is rich. It is empirical. It can be objectively, scientifically tested. And what does it tell you about the day when Rama killed Ravan and when Ram arrived in Ayodhya? This is what it tells you. It tells you that Ram did not kill Ravan on the day of Vijayadashmi. It tells you that Ram did not return to Ayodhya on the day of Deepavali. Although that's how we celebrate it, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to come to that last point, why it is fine or why we should do it that way. Of course, it's perfectly okay to celebrate twice on the right days too. Valmiki Ramayana evidence tells us that the day Rama killed Ravan was the day of also Amavasya. Now, don't confuse that Amavasya with the Deepali Amavasya. The Vijayadashmi is like a Dashmi day. When Rama killed Ravana, it was the end of a Chaitra Masa, lunar month of Chaitra, Chaitra Amavasya. 6th January 12,208 BCE. That's when Ram killed Ravan. Now, then he took a Pushpak Viman, you know, that Ravana's Pushpak Viman, aeroplane. Okay. And from there, now some of you hang on to their chairs. Aeroplane 14,000 years ago. Well, that's what Valmiki Ramayana tells us. Okay. Now, doesn't mean we have to blindly accept it, but unless we can come up with a proof one way or the other, as a narrative, we have to accept it. And it perfectly matches with the descriptions, which is to say, on the Chaitra Amavasya, Ram killed Ravan. And there are a few instances in between, which I will skip just to manage time. And then he flew using Pushpak to the ashrama of Bharadwaj on Vaishak Shukla Panchami. And then the next day, Vaishak Shukla Shashti, and the nakshatra was Pushya nakshatra, he entered Ayodhya. So it was not the day of Amavasya, just so that you know. So now the last question. So just please keep that. So there is a history, there is a celebration, okay? And now to understand the purpose of it in the Dharma civilization. What the objective of celebration in a Dharma civilization is to take that as an opportunity for education, for enlightenment, to know, to learn from the great heroes of the past, like Ram, Krishna, and many others. Okay. And so celebration, why it is done on a certain day? Guess what? When you have a civilization, see, in America, like in last 300, 400, 500 years of European civilization in America, not much has changed. 500 years is a very short time. But when you're talking of 7,000 years ago and 14,000 years ago and 21,000 years ago and 38,000 years ago, so many events are overlapping. So many cycles of astronomy of 26,000 years have gone through. So many other cycles of the nodding of the Earth's axis of 41,000 years have gone through. So many events overlap. And you will never able to match everything about that historical event to any day of celebration. So the great sages of India, what they did is they narrowed down many events. And therefore, if you look at Vijayadashmi or Dashara, you will find many different significances, as if many things happen on that day. If you go to Deepavali, the festival, it will be celebrated around the world next week. You will find many things, historical things are connected, just like Rama's arrival in Ayodhya, with that day. But it doesn't have to be historically exactly precise and accurate, and it is not. And that's perfectly fine. Now, isn't it true that if we have to celebrate our birthday and my birthday or your birthday comes in the middle of the week, but you say, you know what, I have got my exams right now. Let's not celebrate now. Let's do the celebration on the weekend. So we move it. But when we are celebrating on the weekend, we perfectly understand why are we celebrating, what exactly we are celebrating. We do know that your birthday might have actually be on a Wednesday, but you are celebrating it on the weekend. It is exactly in the same fashion, in a very practical, pragmatic fashion, that the sages decided, the great thinkers of India decided, or great thinkers of the world. For example, if you are celebrating on the 25th of December, like those of a Christian faith, that's perfectly fine, in the sense of there is no point just fighting that truly nobody knows the birth of Jesus Christ, whether he was born or not, whether he was around or not, whether it was the 21st of December or 25th of December, because in reality, nobody knows. The point is, as a religious or as a cultural celebration, people just decided, let's do it on 25th of August. It's somewhat similar fashion, but not identical, because in the Indian tradition, they try to preserve the spirit of it. And what is the spirit? Sometimes they preserve the lunar month, like the Nepali tradition of Gudi Padwa. Sometimes they preserved the month, like the Gudi Padwa, or sometimes they shifted, like the Punjab side did not shift, they stuck with Vaisakhi. But most of the India did change 2000 years ago to Chaitra, to try to preserve the spirit, either to match with the true Samvatsar beginning or to match with the true lunar month that they were connected with, or to match with the true season. But keep it in mind, you cannot bring and cannot match all of the things. So there will always be a discrepancy. So you have to understand history on its own terms. You have to understand Utsava or celebration on its own term. You have to understand the purpose of it on its own terms of dharma, and do all three: study history meticulously and correctly in a precise and accurate fashion, enjoy and celebrate these utsav, the celebrations, and don't forget the purpose for either, which is to say the utsav or the itihasa. Understand, it is to truly understand our purpose in life, which we understand through dharma. So with that, Aditya ji, back to you, and I am done.
No, very well put it, because these festivals have particular meaning. And also, you correctly said the Shastras say something else, but the common usage has changed. There is no need to change that, but at least know what was in the real thing. At least you should know that. And
Correct.
and people who claim to be Sanatanis or Hindus or followers of Vedic culture or Hindutva, for them also it becomes more important to educate others, because see, there is only one thinking culture, that is Sanatan Dharma. The rest all other are dogmatic. You know
Yes.
what is happening with Christianity, what is happening in Islam. If you question anything, you might be killed. Like some of the Islamic scholars questioned the location of Mecca, and there is
Hmm.
a beautiful documentary on that. So they cannot accept that Petra was the actual place which Muhammad wanted to see.
Hmm.
If that is a historical account, I'm not from that culture, I cannot say much on that.
Yeah.
But immediately he was that scholar was killed actually.
Oh boy.
So the point is that in Sanatan Dharma, you have the freedom to deliberate, discuss, and the openness which
Yeah.
brings Sanatan Dharma brings is nowhere else you can see.
Right.
So instead of demeaning it, undermining it, or questioning it, questioning is important, but researching is more important. Like
And proper questioning
proper question.
in the contextual questioning, not like therefore because I question and you cannot answer, therefore I'm right and you're wrong. No, we both may not know, right, what the answer is.
And pari prashna pari patena, that is very important.
Shraddha, very much important. If you don't have this attitude of like this person knows more maybe, and let me understand and let me comprehend. People, I today did a post on Twitter, and what I just intend to say, of course, the people who are totally lost their intellect, they will not understand, which is to say, before two reasonable people come together and discuss, there is that agreement that they believe in rationality, they believe in logic, and they believe in evidence, and they believe in science. If they both parties don't believe, there is no point having a conversation, right?
Yes. So and also the sequence that you explained about the Diwali, and so many events come to Diwali. So India is a country of festivals. There are many other festivals also celebrated. Like celebrated celebration of Ishtadev. Every village has a celebration. Every town has a celebration. And I feel it very important to rename the old towns which were renamed by the conquerors, invaders, to the
Yes,
original state, so that we know what is the real history.
correct.
Like renaming Ram Setu as Adam's Bridge is a incorrect thing, even though it is a
Yeah,
Pratibhu, but still it
yeah,
is important to put it
right,
as Ram Setu.
right.
So thank you, Nireshji, for throwing light on important things,
Thank you.
and thank you for viewers who are watching it live, and also people who are going to watch on YouTube. Namaste.
Namaste.